Guys, this is part three of the four-part series I'm doing on with Curt Weldon, Representative Weldon from Pennsylvania, was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. And let's not waste any time. This is going to be a very interesting video because of the simple fact that it's the one area I don't talk about because I feel I'm not qualified. And that is a large part of this video is going to be talking about the collapse of the World Trade Centers. So um, but there's other parts they talk about too. So let's see what they have to say. And I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger here. And I think that's good enough. Okay.
Agree more. So, let's get to 9/11 itself. And you were so deeply involved in so many parts of this personally that I think it's easy to go off on different tangents, but just to the extent that you can describe what you know to be true. You said don't want to speculate as to motive, for example, but what you know to be true. What do you think the core truth of 9/11, September 11th, 2001 is? What?
I don't, at this point in time, I have my own perceptions. I don't have something I can give 100%. I can't swear on, but what I'm seeing bothers me to the core of my body, that 9/11 did not happen because a group of hijackers got control of some planes. First of all, I have confirmed that two of the hijackers that were on one of the planes in New York were working for the CIA. They were.
No. Okay. Well, look, if you're going to speculate, speculate. But you can't say, I know on record, but I can't say that the two hijackers, who you're referring to as Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, were on the CIA payroll. Well, according to Operation Encore, according to the counter document, no, they weren't. In fact, they were given financial aid by the Saudis. Now, if you want to say that the CIA and the Saudis were working together covertly, well, the CIA was given funding through the Saudis to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, then you have to say it like that. But even then, you have to be you're walking on eggshells here because you still don't have any evidence that this was a direct payment. Was it indirectly? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. All I do know is the money came from Saudi Arabia. It came from the bank account of Bandar bin Sultan, and this is from the FBI's own records, through Riggs Bank, and also money coming from Omar al-Bayoumi, who was getting money from companies that hired him as a ghost employee, meaning that he never showed up for work. Companies like Gala Avco, which has ties to Osama bin Laden, believe it or not. And also through the aviation, I think the Office of Saudi Aviation or something like that, to that effect, that were giving him a stipend every month. But there's no record anywhere that I have come across that says that the CIA, as an agency, was directly paying al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi as spies or as informants. No, my God, when this story broke out, even like the gray zone got it wrong. Oh, the CIA were CIA agents. No, they fucking weren't. And it's only because Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi had already made Omar al-Bayoumi, suggesting that he was a Saudi spy. Okay. And on top of that, the CIA basically didn't tell the FBI about these two men because they had allowed them into the country. And that it was the Saudis who were driving them around. It was the Saudis that were giving them lodging. It was the Saudis that helped them with the rent payments and the helping get through the application process for their ID cards. Wasn't the CIA. But they have oversaw the operation? Yeah. But like I said in yesterday's video with 60 Minutes, did the Saudis tell the CIA everything? Probably not. Probably not. But yeah, Curt, I mean, No, I can't agree with you here. And especially if you're not going to come out and say, hey, which CIA official was in on it. I mean, then, I'm sorry, I can't.
On the CIA payroll. And that was confirmed to me by someone in writing from one of our agencies. And I have.
Yeah, someone in writing. Who is that? And unless you come out and say it, I don't know why you wouldn't say it. You're retired, right? Unless you're going to come out and say it, then what good is this? Because it leads your audience, excuse me, it leads your audience to think, oh, the CIA was in on it. They hide, and that's really dangerous because you're making a bold declaration. Now, look, I'm the biggest critic when it comes to CIA, especially with 9/11. But I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say anything that's defamatory without providing tangible evidence. I'm not that type of person. Now, I may not be popular because of it, but so what? I'm not in this for fucking popularity. I'm in this to inform the people responsible. As naive as that sounds, but I believe it because I believe in the only way we're going to get to the truth of the matter about anything and where we're going to take action is by being knowledgeable about certain things. Because I would like to go to a court of law and start holding people accountable. And we can't do that if you believe anything. So what Curt Weldon is saying here really just is a nothing burger. And I would have pressed him on it. Who was this person?
That letter. So two of the people involved were actually working for the CIA in one of the planes. I know that. And they lost control of them. And there were reprimands against those agency people after the fact. Second, I know the intelligence, they tried 3 times to transfer the information about information that could have prevented 9/11. That's fact.
To the Justice Department.
That's true.
And I have the name of the person that at the Justice Department they contacted, and she was told to cancel the meetings. They couldn't have the meetings.
Who did that order come from? Who?
That's what needs to be investigated.
Okay.
And then we have John Crane.
Whoa, Curt. You are the one who brought it up. You're the one who brought up this person. Well, who is it? Well, that has to come to investigation. No. Oh. Again. Yeah, I don't like, I'm not picking on Curt Weldon. I don't like the fact that I don't like sound bites. Okay. I don't want to say like, oh, tune in next week and see what the Hardy Boys are doing next about investigating the Shadow Man, right? I don't do that. I like to be straight and direct. I mean, we're way past time about saying, well, we need a new investigation to find out who these people are. Oh, I spoke with certain people and they, I have them in writing, but I can't say it right now. Why? Why not? 24 fucking years. We got to start naming names now, pal. It's now or never. Or else you're going to go the way of JFK, RFK, and every other damn conspiracy predating 9/11.
The Inspector General of the Pentagon, who went to the extent of issuing a request for whistleblower status because he was told to lie to the Congress and lie about pre-9/11 intelligence and able danger. And then we have General, the book by the General and his comments that he knew within seconds. None of this is in the 9/11 Commission report. The 9/11 Commission report is a piece of garbage.
Well, then you also have it. I mean, this is just a fact. I don't know what to make of it, but you have a guy called Alex Jones, who's a broadcaster, who said that summer that the World Trade Centers are going to hit by planes and a guy called Osama bin Laden is going to be blamed. He said that on tape with a timestamp, so we know that actually happened. That's not making it up. It's not a conspiracy theory. He said that. And it's like, how would he know that? That's so far out of the realm of what anyone was thinking in Washington, where I lived at the time. So then my question is, okay.
You don't get off that easy, pal, because I got the clip. And I'm going to share it. And Alex Jones never says this. In fact, he doesn't say anything like that at all. And this is the problem I'm hearing over this, the years, is that, Alex Jones predicted 9/11 or Bill Cooper predicted 9/11. None of these idiots predicted 9/11. None of them. All right, this is the clip. I edited perfectly. I didn't edit everything, But it's a long broadcast, so I had to edit to the part where he brings up Bin Laden. Now, again, July of 2001 is where this broadcast is. Okay? It's no fucking secret that Bin Laden wants to attack the United States. I mean, for God fucking sakes, ladies and gentlemen, the guy was making videos, interviews with CNN, interviews with John Miller about attacking the fucking United States. It wasn't a secret. The real conspiracy is that the United States had enough information to stop 9/11 and know who was behind the attacks. Instead, we go to war with Iraq. And instead, the intelligence services says we didn't have enough manpower. We didn't have enough intelligence. We had an overwhelming amount. Well, here's the Alex Jones clip.
I want the White House numbers up there now. A big part of this solution, after you research all the government terrorism and check out what I'm saying is true, call the White House and tell them, we know the government's planning terrorism. We know Oklahoma City and World Trade Center was terrorism. We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun. If you do it, we're going to blame you because we know who's up to it. Or if you let some terrorist group do it, like the World Trade Center, we know who to blame. And you could save the planet. I'm calling it Operation Expose the Government.
There you go. Where was the prediction for 9/11? Nowhere. Wait, how do you get that? Well, that's predicting 9/11. He's talking about the World Trade Center fucking bombing, which Bin Laden had nothing to do with it. So, yeah, I mean, Tucker Carlson, what the fuck? I mean, I knew never to trust you. I mean, I don't trust you through a hole in the wall, as far as I can fucking throw you. But this is, man, I wish Curt Weldon didn't do this interview.
If I'm Philip Zelikow, the guy running the 9/11 Commission, I'm calling Alex Jones immediately, saying, come on in, under oath, and we're going to find out, how did you know that? And instead, the U.S. government, the FBI in particular, set about to destroy Alex Jones and almost succeeded. I mean, they engineered $1 billion judgment against him, et cetera, but they really have tried to kill him for saying that. And it's like, if you wanted to get to the truth, why would you act that way? Okay. Why would you knock you out of Congress?
Listen up. If they wanted to kill Alex Jones, he'd be dead. It's not like he's some fucking whistleblower. The guy's only in the game for as long as he is because he's selling a lot of bullshit. That's the fucking truth. To all you Jones fanboys out there. A broken clock is right twice a day. He may say something that's true, but 95% of the shit that he says is bullshit. It's what keeps him relevant and keeps him going. If he was breaking any ordinances within the powers that be, he would be gone a long time ago. He wouldn't be a fucking multi-millionaire doing lines of coke underneath the desks at InfoWars with his friends like Owen Schroyer, another idiot.
At the time of 9/11, I had been to the World Trade Center in 93. The governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, called my office, talked to me personally, thanked me for coming up. He watched my 1-hour presentation. I was back up there with Ray Downey. I brought Ray Downey's widow and 5 kids down to my district after 9/11 to honor him as a hero. I was up all during the 9/11 incident at Ground Zero, and I did everything I could and I felt responsible. Do you know the 9/11 Commission would not let me testify before the commission? Now, I'm a firefighter. I'm a fire chief. I'm a state fire instructor. I spent my whole career helping protect people from disasters. The 9/11 Commission, even though my experience as a member of Congress, Vice Chairman of Defense and Homeland Security, would not call me to testify, would not call me to go in and speak before the 9/11, because they knew what I would say. So when the commission said it's going to issue its report, which was
pardon to interrupt, what year was that?
It was when the report was released. I think it was 2005. So what I did, the report was being released in the Ways and Means room of the Cannon Building. I went over. I sat in the front row to be the first one. Lee Hamilton and Tom Keene were up there. Good people. I don't blame them. It wasn't them. It was the staffers that controlled this. It wasn't the commissioners.
This is a Zelikow guy.
That's right. Zelikow and Gorelick. And Dieter Snell. Dieter Snell was a staffer working.
Yeah. I knew it. I knew it. Hold on, pal. Screenshots. Okay. Sorry about that.
who
Jimmy
was a
Grosh.
Clinton
Clinton
DOJ.
appointee who wrote the firewall memo that said you can't transfer military intelligence to civilian law
I
enforcement.
think Bill Kristol's cousin too, unless I'm
I don't know.
misremembering that.
Maybe that's the case.
I
So I sat in
think
the front
that's
row
right.
and I said, Lee, why did you not allow me to testify? And he said to me, well, Congressman, you know, we had a lot of people that wanted to testify. Now I'm the representative of all the firefighters in the country. I'm the point person for the firefighters.
Yes.
I'm a firefighter and a fire chief. I'd been at the Trade Center in 93. I'd been there at 9/11, and they would not let me testify because they didn't want to hear what I had to say.
What would you have said? And
I
what
would have said that we caused this.
What do you mean? We
With the intelligence, I have the evidence that we could have stopped this. Not me. Louis Freeh said that. Based upon what I came out with, Louis Freeh's op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, which I can give you a copy of, said the 9/11 Commission was an incomplete investigation. And he also went on Good Morning America and said the same thing. They tried to blame Louis Freeh because Louis Freeh had left the FBI the year before 9/11 happened. So he was their scapegoat. And to this day, I think Louis is very upset over that.
yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? Let me show you a clip regarding what he said to Tim Romer at the 9/11 Commission. Right? Now, here he is, Louis Freeh, talking about had information about Khalid al-Mihdhar had been passed to the FBI by the CIA. Could they have prevented 9/11 attacks? See what they had to say. It's Curt Weldon is right.
Presence of those two hijackers in San Diego and their intersection with the informant. Obviously, a very fruitful opportunity for exploitation, intelligence information, maybe in the best of all circumstances leading to prevention. It would have been helpful. It would have been helpful for the FBI at that particular point in time to know the names of those two individuals. That the information which was generated in the January 2000 physical surveillance, not by the CIA but by a liaison agency, if that information and the initiation for that surveillance, which were phone calls to a central number, which you're well aware of, which plays a integral role not only in the East African bombings case, but also in the Cole investigation. The June meeting when 3 but not all of the photographs were disclosed to FBI agents, and the subsequent description of those events. If all of that had worked the way it could have worked, and that informant, as well as informants all over the FBI's domain, were tasked to find out information about two specific people, you could have had a completely different result.
There you go. All right. So Curt Weldon is absolutely correct. And that's absolutely correct. Had Khalid al-Mihdhar and Mohamed been arrested, 9/11 could have been prevented, at least, or part of it.
Yeah, I believe that.
So the only way around this is to have for the firefighters of America and for our country, to have an independent commission be appointed and give that commission full authority to take this wherever it goes, including the end result. And the end result may be very ugly.
There's a sense in which that's pretty obvious. I mean, like, why is anything from 9/11 still classified? It's our country. It happened to 3,000 of our fellow Americans. We have an absolute right to know what happened. It's not even a question. And it was almost 25 years ago. So, like, spare me your lectures about national security. But can I ask you this? So, by the way, I never questioned anything about 9/11, and I actively attacked people who did. I'm ashamed of that, but that's a fact. I did it on tape more than once. Because my feeling was, well, like, that's divisive or whatever. I was a child and an idiot. But what began to make me wonder, and I have no idea what happened to 9/11, but it's very clear that there's a lot of lying around it, was the collapse of Building 7. And all the wackos would be like, Building 7, Building 7. I'd be like, shut up, wackos. And then if you just sort of look at it, you're like, well, that is very weird, actually. No plane hit that building. And does this happen a lot when buildings catch fire? Right. Okay.
Besides being a firefighter, I work for the INA, largest insurance company in North America. I was responsible for training their fire protection arson people for 18 years. That doesn't happen. You never have a 47-story building just collapse, which this did. Even Donald Trump, I have a tape of him speaking on 9/11, and Donald Trump, which I'll give you a copy
I've seen it.
If there's any evidence,
says that's controlled demolition.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly looks that way. I mean, look, I don't know.
See, here's what they did. They brought in NIST.
I got to play it because I was looking for it before, but I could play it. What I'm going to do is play a clip of Tucker Carlson berating some guys in 9/11 truther, and There he is here. Listen to what he had to say.
If there's any evidence that the government was behind 9/11, look, I believe anything if there's evidence, but there isn't any. So knock it off. That's my view.
Ridiculous. So for family members of the victims that are asking questions and want the evidence that's been withheld by the government released, you would say that they're less than adults somehow for wanting that
I would say that parasites like you make it much worse for them.
Boy, did he change his tune real fast, right? So here we go. Curt Weldon, World Trade Center collapses. Here we go.
They brought in NIST to do a report.
Can you tell us what NIST is?
NIST is the National Institute for Standards and Technology to do an assessment. Now, they're like any other federal agency, and there are good people there, but there are people that want their jobs and want their careers, and they're not going to rock the boat. And they came out with a report that's hogwash. The University of Alaska, which is an very
By the way, University of Alaska was run by architects and engineers. By the way, architects and engineers, if I have to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, when at the time was run by Richard Gage doesn't believe the world is round. He thinks it's flat, or maybe. He once told me that the hijackers weren't even on the planes. He doesn't believe in hijackers. Here's a man who doesn't even believe a plane was hijacked or crashed in the Pentagon or Shanksville. And we're going to trust the words of this man? I'm not going to say that everybody in architects and engineers is a liar, but I mean, when you have a prominent figure like this, and you're basically saying that the NIST report and NIST people, you can't trust them because their federal grants might be taken away. I'm sorry, it comes down to science, right? So this is where I'm lacking. I'm not a very good engineer. Now, do I believe the World Trade Centers came down by pre-planted explosives or something like that? I don't tend to believe that. I tend to believe that those towers had to collapse. Now, my very first interview on the podcast, Dark and Hour, I interviewed David Chandler. I like David Chandler, always did, and always found him to be a reputable person. Is he wrong about his assessments? How could I say he's wrong when I have no qualifications to say he's wrong? My opinions mean shit. Anybody else's opinions mean shit. If you're listening to me and I say, listen, here's my opinion, don't take it seriously. Okay? You may listen to it and say, oh, it sounds all right. But what I would want for you is to do your due diligence and take what I have to say and run it through the scientific method to see if what I'm saying is true. And that takes time. And people are just impatient. They want the truth. They want it now. They want headlines. I don't want none of that. Okay. If I knew that 9/11 was as easy as some of the truthers like to say what 9/11 is, I would have hair and I wouldn't have spent 18 years studying various fields intimately and basically reading close to 100,000 files and documents in those years. I have read 200 books on various subjects relating to this field. And I don't know shit, right? Now, compare that to people who say, well, I'm going to believe one side of the story. Okay, the study by Alaska was run by Leroy Hulsey. Leroy Hulsey had 3 people, and they were paid by architects and engineers who already have a bias. The bias is the government is somewhere involved with 9/11. That's not how you start. You don't start a crime by saying, I know who did it before looking at evidence. Because the only thing you're going to look at are information that agrees with your perception. A detective, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, a detective comes to a crime scene, he looks at the evidence, he runs it through by interviewing witnesses, looking at the forensics, looking at the technical data, right? And he puts it through the scientific method. And then he repeats it to see if it comes up with the same result. That's how you get the truth. That's what science is. Now, again, I go back to David Chandler. David Chandler said, even if you don't believe me, he goes, think of it like this. If the World Trade Center, say, for example, survived the planes impacting them, what it would mean is that subliminal. It would say to the American populace, to the authority behind the people, the military, the government, we took your best shot. Now it's our turn. We could rebuild, towers stay standing. But he said with the towers collapsing, it shows that you're not safe. We attacked your biggest, most expensive buildings in the United States. And if we can collapse those, we can get to you and collapse you. And by the towers coming down, was the first thing you hear from the crowd? A groaning, weeping, crying. In that, it created a psychological terror. I mean, just imagine being there, seeing these towers collapsing must have been a horror. I mean, I have downloaded on my hard drive, I have 35,000 videos over the 18 years I've been downloading. Still download some things, but not as proficient. And a lot, I have a folder where it's just basically NIST videos, amateur videos of the World Trade Centers collapsing. And it's the one area I must admit I'm lacking, very lacking, less than a layman. And I wish I wasn't. I was more interested in who the hijackers were, what intelligence services were involved with the monitoring these people. Why were they successful? Oh, they were being monitored by the CIA. And I went down this road, and it took forever. I'm still learning. But the World Trade Center, for some people, that's 9/11. No, it's just one part. There's no such thing as what's more important. Is it ground zero? Because I have one truther told me, I'm not going to say his name, right? I had a guy who's very prominent in activism, who was a truther, who basically said to me once that there are parts of 9/11 that are important and parts that are less important. Imagine if your family's murdered, your mother, your father, and a cop says, well, we're going to investigate certain things, but certain things are not important. You would be fucking mortified, right? And rightfully so. So with that, you have to look at 9/11 through a very expensive lens. Now, I'm almost ranting at this point, but what I'm trying to make is something clear, is that I'm sorry, Curt. I'm not going to dismiss NIST in favor of architects and engineers because I'm very familiar with Richard Gage and some of those people there, like Andy Steele, okay, and Craig McKee, who are now running the show, right? Kelly David. These people are disgusting frauds. Disgusting. Now, Richard Gage is not involved with them anymore. Roland Angle just passed away. I don't know who's running architects and engineers anymore. Richard Gage got kicked out because he was pushing, ridiculous conspiracies. Now he's worse off. But who's telling the truth? I don't know. I could give you my opinion, but what good is that? Do I think the World Trade Centers 1, 2, and 7 came down by pre-planted explosives? I don't think 7 did. 1 and 2, I think the beams were weakened. That's what I think. And a lot of people say, wow, I never heard this before. It's because I don't talk about things that I am not learned in. I'm not learned in the Civil War. I'm not learned in the JFK assassination. I'm not learned in World War II. So you won't hear me doing videos explaining about certain histories because I don't want to persuade my audience with baseless speculation and opinions and innuendos.
Credible engineering department did a full refutation of the NIST report, saying it's full with gaps and full with inaccuracies and areas where they did not get the right information. Let me just say this to you. People say, well, you can't question NIST. NIST always does the right thing. When I went to Congress, Tucker, in my first term, I'm 2 doors from the Speaker's office, Speaker Jim Wright. His office catches on fire. It's 7 o'clock at night. As a firefighter, I go up, punch the door open, get down on my hands and knees, crawl in. The kitchen's fully involved. This is all documented. You can read about it. And said to my staffer, go get me the portable extinguishers. 3 of the 5 weren't charged. I said, go get me the hose in the hose station. There was no hose in the hose station. I come back out and I say, we got to evacuate the building. Now, I'm in my first term. It's a 7-story building above ground. No sprinklers, no detectors, no alarms. Here is the building, one of the 6 office buildings holding the House and the Senate in violation of every building code and fire code in America. Now, I'm an expert on NFPA 101, the Life Safety Code, and the BOCA codes. This building, if NIST did its job, NIST would have said, if you're going to be in Congress, you're going to work in a building where your constituents who are blind and handicapped are not going to feel threatened. 7 stories above ground. No alarm system. No detection system. So a fire's occurring, and the police are running through the building yelling, fire, get out. That's you cannot trust the federal agencies.
Obviously. Of course. That's obvious now. But tell us, like, from an engineering perspective, like, what you had 3 buildings come down, sort of collapse in on themselves, implode, it looked like. And like a lot of people have said, many credible, non-crazy people have said that was controlled demolition. Was it?
Well, when I got up there the day after, I had been in the Trade Center at the restaurant on the top several times. There's no way those 2 buildings could have collapsed into what they were there. Something had to happen.
Was that obvious to you immediately?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and they were looking for other firefighters like Ray Downey and the 342 others that were trapped and eventually vaporized. So something happened. Whether there's a high explosive material, I think it's called fermite, that is used to explode metal and steel and vaporize it. Those tests were never done on that. There were some limited tests that found that there was some evidence of that, the whole thing never was subjected to the kind of investigation that would be warranted when 3,000 people die. I mean, when you...
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. That's not exactly true, but he's not exactly incorrect here either. They asked the FBI's counterterrorism task force and their bomb technicians whether they tested the dust, the debris for explosives. And some reporter asked him, it was in I don't know, I think it was Los Angeles, one of the Times thing. Was it Los Angeles or New York Times, or I can't remember. It was so long ago. But anyway, and you don't have to take my word on this, but they said that because this was a conspiracy later on about, hey, it might have been either thermite or explosives, and they said, well, you guys didn't test because that truth is said you never tested. But the FBI laughed and said, the agent laughed, and he says, well, of course we tested for it. They test for it, not NIST. They test for it. It's the same. It's similar to when people said, why didn't the NTSB? Why weren't they in charge of collecting the plane debris? Because it's a crime scene. And an air piracy, hijacking, is a federal crime where the FBI takes precedence over the National Transportation Safety Board. Department of Justice was in charge of seeing what happened to these planes. But since it was so obvious the planes were hijacked from the radar data, from the phone calls, from the satellite data, everything. Eyewitnesses that saw the planes crash into the grounds in Shanksville, the Pentagon, the World Trade Center. Yeah.
If 3,000 people die, you would think it would be a full massive investigation, not going after 9/11, obviously, but what happened to the buildings and why'd they come down? They're the only high-rise buildings in the world that have ever come down from an airplane hitting them. And those buildings,
Well, I mean, yeah, right? Now, again, I can't disagree with Curt Weldon here, right? Because it would require me to know something that I told you I'm not versed in, right? But my opinion is that, yeah, these towers came down because it destroyed the mindset of the American public, right? Defeatism. And how many, whoever's watching this video, if you're a New Yorker, if you're old enough, you very well damn know what that impact, that psychological impact was when the towers came down. I can tell you that it changed New York forever. Yeah, yes. We're 24 years past, almost a quarter century past. It's not, New York is not the same as it was then, or as the same as it was, 2 years ago. But the mentality has changed. We're more a bit paranoid. We're not as abrasive or confident. It's not like that anymore. So that's changed.
Read the report from the architect who designed them. They were designed to withstand an airplane hitting the building and
For sure.
standing tall.
And especially buildings.
Okay, wait a minute. That's not necessarily true either. Because what I'm about to play you is a video by Leslie Robertson, who talks about the World Trade Center being designed to survive Boeing 707 at the time that wasn't fully loaded with fuel. Now, again, this guy has been misquoted over the years, and this is an updated video. This is a recent video that he made, and I'm going to play it right here for you right now. And it's not long at all. Listen to what he has to say. Listen carefully.
We had designed the project for the impact of the largest airplane of its time, the Boeing 707. The 767 that actually hit the World Trade Center was quite another matter again. First of all, it was a bit heavier than the 707, not very much heavier, but a bit heavier. But mostly it was flying a lot faster. And the energy that it put into the building is proportional to the square of the velocity. That is, you double the velocity, 4 times the energy, triple the velocity, 8 times the energy, and so forth. And then, of course, with the 707, to the best of my knowledge, the fuel load was not considered in the design. And indeed, I don't know how it could have been considered. And with the 767, the fuel load was enormous compared to that of the 707. It was a fully fueled airplane compared to the 707, which was a landing aircraft. Just absolutely no comparison between the two.
Bingo. All right. So look, is he in on it? I'm just showing you what the man has to say. All right. So, geez, Tucker Carlson. I mean,
7, which had no plane hit it. Right.
No plane hit it.
He goes from criticizing truthers to becoming a guy who's just asking the regular crackpot questions. I wouldn't say he's a nut job. I don't think he's nuts at all. I think Tucker Carlson is intelligent and knows what he's doing by asking questions that are basically nonsensical or suggesting scenarios that are just flatly wrong. But as you can see, throughout the 3 parts I'm playing, where's the Gerald Shea memorandum? Where's Operation Encore? Where's the Canestraro document? Where's the Pent Bomb document? Where's the Inspector General report of the FBI? Where's the Inspector General report of the CIA? I mean, you did talk about the congressional inquiries. Kudos. We have so much more. And the problem with the World Trade Centers, right, and the bombings or lack thereof, is that even if you prove that there were bombs planted in the World Trade Center, who put them in? And for 24 years, the truth movement, including architects and engineers, never come up with a name. In fact, there's only one name that comes up: Larry Silverstein, who wasn't even fucking there that day. Now, is he suspicious as fuck? Damn straight. Is he guilty of anything? Nope. Just because you're suspicious is not guilty of anything. Can't take that guy to court. But you can take to court George Tenet for lying to Congress. Topher Black, Counterterrorism Center, lying to Congress. Tom Wilshire, the deputy director of Alex Station, for lying to Congress. People within the Department of Defense Southern Operations Command law team, or whoever told them to destroy the information that Anthony Schaefer had and Eric Kleinsmith and the people at the Land Information Warfare's Activities Division? Yeah. But no, you won't talk about that because You're not interested in naming names. So what are you in this for?
And the building you can see it when you watch it on TV, it just implodes straight down. And what really got me again was Oriole Palmer, the battalion chief, arising on the...
Well, tell us who he was. What is...
Okay, Oriole Palmer was one of the most inspirational battalion chiefs in New York.
FDNY.
FDNY, who immediately, in very good shape, had a family, a couple of kids, went into the building as soon as they got on the scene, took the elevator up to the 40th floor. Got off the elevator, and you can hear him on the comm system say, "I'm here, 40th floor. We're going to start walking up the stairwells." Every 5 floors, he radios back to communication. "I'm on the 50th floor. Everything's okay. We're on floor 60. Everything's okay." He's going up. Every so many floors, he gives a report. He reaches the 78th floor, the floor of impact. He comes out of the stair tower, and as clear as you listening to me here, and I know I get passionate, and I apologize to your listeners for that. He says, "We're on floor 78, the floor of impact. We've got 2 fires, and we can handle them." 1 minute later, the whole building collapses. That's not normal. That's
not the point of impact, by the way. That's right by the point of impact. I think it was 6, 7 floors, between 78 to like 85. So I want to say 78 to 84. Let's just say that much. So he does say that we have 2 isolated pockets of fire. I think we could knock it down with 2 lines, right? But remember, again, the fires had already risen up, not down. They've risen up, right? Smoke goes up, not down. So at that time, the fires basically were, raging on the 80, 81, 82 floors. And that's why you see people jumping from the highest floors. And a lot of the jet fuel went down the elevator shafts. So there you have it. Were there 6 floors of raging fire? No. Now, it is interesting to note that you didn't mention the other guy's name, but it's not your fault. But the other fire chief that went up with Oriole Palmer is a guy that I've covered, and myself and DJ Thermodetonator have for many years, Ronald Booker, a flying fireman. There's a great story behind him that goes back to the 93 bombing, unlike Oriole Palmer. Yeah, there's a connection. And yes, towers did collapse on top of him as soon as he, I think it was like 2 minutes after he made that broadcast. Now, does that mean someone was listening and then ordered the approval for the collapse of the World Trade Centers? Boy, is that a stretch. Is it impossible? No. Right? Is it irrational speculation? I wouldn't say. Do I believe it? No. I think it's a coincidence. Towers collapses, just shortly after his broadcast. That's it.
Is not acceptable. That is not what happened.
And this is on tape?
It's on tape. The film is called Bravo 7. And if your viewers want it, if they contact you, I'll give it to you. It's free. It was produced not by Hollywood. It was produced by firefighters. And it includes the footage, including the firefighter, the footage of the firefighter communication between him and the command center. You can hear him as plain as day saying, "I'm on the impact floor, floor 78. We have 2 fires here. We can control them." And he's comfortable. He's not worrying about the building collapsing. He just walked up 38 floors and the whole building collapses. Tucker, it's a big lie.
Can I, what? Okay, 2 things. What percentage of firefighters who were there that day are knowledgeable about building fires agree with you on this?
Well, I have the utmost respect for the fire department of New York. When I wrote the manuscript Able Danger, which I didn't publish because my lawyer said they would kill me back in 2006, I never published it. I'm going to publish it this year. Last summer in July, I took a draft copy of the manuscript, and I met for 2 hours with John Esposito. He's the chief. He's a great man. I have total respect for him. And John knows me. And I said, "John, you know my respect for the department." And I said, "Yes, Congressman, we know that." I said, "I want to give you this copy of my manuscript. and I'm signing it in honor of Ray Downey for you to keep in your archives. This is what really happened. He took it. I felt I owed it to the fire department of New York and their members. There has been this subtle pressure to the firefighters and to the officers not to talk for obvious reasons. You know what this involves politically. And look what happened.
You know what's interesting? It's not true. I interviewed one of the fire chiefs that was there. In fact, he was in World Trade Center 7 for the show, The Darkened Hour, Richard Rotans. I reached out to him. He was willing to talk. You know, I have yet to try and get to, like, say, Frank Carruthers, or Daniel Negro, you know, these fire chiefs. Or Joseph Pfeiffer. He's retired now. So I think some of the chiefs are even passed away too. I'm not sure, but some of them were old. So, but they don't really share your thoughts on the subject, and they're not pressured to not talk about it. At the time, they were told not to really talk about it because it was still an investigation by the FBI regarding it. So,
happened to the chief of LA. The female chief of LA comes out and says that the resources were taken away from her for the field forest fires. And what does the mayor do? She fires her. That was just a few weeks ago.
I don't know.
The firefighters are always a scapegoat. That's why, Tucker, I'm done with this. If it's the last thing I do, firefighters are not going to be taken for granted anymore. We're going to rise up. We're going to shake the country to its roots.
I got it. Especially if you're going to be bringing up Alex Jones and you're going to be talking about hijackers and CIA payrolls. No one's going to take you seriously. I am sometimes, you know, you end up disappointed, right? And because I like Curt Weldon, and I'm always going to respect him for what he did for Anthony Schaefer, because at the time nobody stuck up for Anthony Schaefer. But Curt Weldon, at least he took it right to the House floor. And for him to go on Tucker Carlson. Anyway, guys, we have one more part to go, and that'll be it. All right. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you in the next video, everybody. Take care.